straits have to be open. They're going to be open one way or the other. So they need to be open. What's happening there is unlawful, it's illegal, it's unsustainable for the world, it's unacceptable. I don't know of any country in the world that doesn't. The Russians are not in favor of a tolling system. The Chinese are not in favor of a tolling system. I mean, there's no country in the world that's in favor of a tolling system except the regime in Iran. So that's not acceptable. That cannot happen. The straits need to be open, unimpeded, without tolls, and obviously that needs to happen immediately as soon as anything's agreed to.
All right, Secretary of State Marco Rubio there making it clear where the United States stands on the Strait of Hormuz, which was open before this war started nearly 3 months ago. We'll bring you the latest on the talks to end the conflict and dig into whether U.S. strikes yesterday will actually complicate those negotiations or what. Plus, we'll have an update on the developing situation at an ICE facility in New Jersey after Governor Mikey Sherrill says she was denied access amid a reported hunger strike by detainees inside. Also ahead, after 13 months and $135 million, the Republican primary between Senator John Cornyn of Texas and the state's Attorney General, Ken Paxton, will come to an end tonight. We will preview that runoff election. And for the first time since 1999, the New York Knicks are in the NBA Finals. We'll have the highlights after last night's sweep of the Cleveland Cavaliers. Good morning and welcome to Morning Joe. It is Tuesday, May 26th. With us, we have the co-host of our 9 a.m. hour, staff writer at The Atlantic, Jonathan Lemire, co-host of the Rest is Politics podcast, the BBC's Katty Kay, columnist and associate editor of The Washington Post, David Ignatius is with us, and former White House official under President Biden, retired Rear Admiral John Kirby. He's now an MSNOW national security analyst. Joe, we have so much to get to, but I think we start
we really do.
With the Knicks.
Yeah, we're going to start with the Knicks in a
allow.
second. I just want to go back to the New Jersey story, though, with Mikey Sherrill. It remains extraordinary that governors of states, that United States senators, that members of Congress who actually fund these, what many people inside are calling concentration camps. I think that really internment camps certainly do fit. That they can't get in. You're a governor of a state where they have placed one of these internment camps, and the Trump administration does not allow you to go inside there. You're a United States senator or a United States congressman, congresswoman, and
that's their job.
Actually fund. You fund these internment sites, and they're black holes. They're black holes, and you have people inside there that are being held that shouldn't be held there. We know that, and we know that they'll stay as long as they can stay because the people inside there get paid by the day. In many cases, from the reporting that we've gotten, so the longer they hold people, even if those people are held illegally, well, the more money they make. So again, something has to be done here. Every member of Congress should go to every internment camp in their districts and should demand that they be allowed to be in, or they fund nothing. They absolutely fund it. And I will tell you that happened. That happened when I was in Congress. Everything came to a stop. We said, we're not passing a single bill until you talk to us about how you're going to balance this budget, how you're going to save Medicare, how you're going to save Social Security. If we can do that about Medicare and Social Security, we can do that about human beings who are being brutalized inside these internment camps. And brutalized so much that many leave saying that they're like concentration camps. Now, how can we verify that? Oh, wait, I'll tell you how we can verify it. You can actually let members of Congress, United States senators who funded those internment camps to go in and check on a daily basis to see how the people inside of there are being treated. You know, we have enemies in wars that allow the Red Cross to go in and check. But we're actually funding. I want to say it again. We're actually funding as taxpayers through the United States Congress, through the Article 1 branch, these internment camps where people are being abused, where people are being held when they should be freed.
Yeah. Yes.
And this administration thinks they have a right. An Article 2 branch thinks they have a right to tell an Article 1 branch or a governor who actually is hosting the internment camp in her state that they don't have a right to do that. That's absolutely ridiculous. We're going to talk about that much, much more. It's got to come to an end. There has to be transparency. What is the Trump administration hiding? What is the DHS hiding? What abuses, what serial abuses of human beings are they hiding? And I want to say for everybody who's stupid enough to say, well, they're here illegally. We don't know that. You don't know that. You're just making that shit up. You don't know who's in there. And you don't know if they're here illegally or not.
Even someone here illegally has rights to due process. And what is going on here is many layers of wrong. Many layers. And there are a lot of members of Congress, if they're watching right now, who are saying, we have been. Like Adalita Grijalva has been trying to get into Dilley, been trying to get into these different centers, and they are denied access again and again and again. Cory Booker, they try and get in to see what is happening to these human beings. Many children being held, families separated, and the reports in there from the putrid water to the way they're being treated to the lack of privacy in America. This is happening.
100 men jammed into one room, no guards that will actually come in there. They're sharing maybe one or two filthy, backed up toilets. It's unbelievable. But Mika, I was getting to the point that you just made, which is a lot of people will say stupidly, oh, they're illegal. They get what they deserve. First of all, you don't know if they're here illegally. Secondly, the rules keep changing. Now we're going after people applying for green cards and saying now they have to be sent home, people that are in the application process. But I know the Constitution doesn't mean much to you if you are in the cult. I know it doesn't, because you've proven time and again the United States Constitution and constitutional norms don't matter to you. But none other than Antonin Scalia was asked the question, who does the United States apply to? And Scalia said, well, it applies to American citizens living in the United States. It applies to American citizens living all across the world. And Scalia, the godfather of conservative jurisprudence, said, and it applies to anybody that is in the United States of America. They are protected by constitutional rights. Those constitutional rights are being just torn to shreds every single day inside of these internment camps, and it's time that something be done. Now, in slightly different news, we're going to take a hard turn.
Yeah.
This is a leap. This is a leap to the NBA Finals. John Lemire, I suppose I could continue depressing us by going and talking about something, of course, much less weighty, but much more talked about, the horrid Boston Red Sox series. The horrid Boston Red Sox season. Many people saying, the worst season since 1907, and yet the Sox only 3.5 games out. It's a long season. I stick by that. But instead, why don't we talk about something that brings none of us any joy, and that's the New York Knicks going to the finals. There, I admitted it. I said it out loud on a New York show. I said it out loud. The Knicks are going to the Eastern Finals. Tell us about it. They do look dominant.
Yeah, no one more surprised than Knicks fans. But yes, they are. The New York Knicks making their first finals appearance since 1999. They, of course, have not won a championship since the early 70s. It's been more than 50 years. This wasn't even close. They've now won 11 straight playoff games, that's including consecutive sweeps, and they've done so in historic margins. Their margin of victory over those 11 games, not just a record for the playoffs, but a record for any 11-game win streak ever in the history of the NBA, regular season included. And yes, they've caught some breaks along the way. Some top seeds went out early, so therefore they were able to have home court throughout the East, even as a 3 seed. The competition will get much tougher in the finals. But right now, first of all, today, Knicks fans just going to celebrate this because it's been such a long time coming. But the path is there. The Spurs and Thunder, perceived by many as better teams than the Knicks, but they're locked in what's going to be a long series, physical series. Both teams beat up, suffering injuries. The Knicks are going to get a week off here. they have a chance. And Knicks fans who have been suffered for a very long time are daring to dream. And it is something I will say, I mean, I take no pleasure in it, Joe. But when the Knicks are good, when the Knicks go on a run, it unites New York in a way that no other team does. And there's a certain energy in the city right now that's undeniable.
Yeah, no, I've got to actually say, I've got to admit, this is all very exciting, and I hope they do very well and go all the way. I mean, you know, this is, you know, when I was very young, Clyde the Glide Frazier, Dollar Bill Bradley. I mean, it was an incredible Knicks teams that won the championship 2 years. It would be great to see another championship title come to Madison Square Garden. I want to, we're going to read news, Mika, in a second. But David Ignatius, before we start, and some of this may be repetitive when we do read the news, but before this starts, just let's talk about where we are right now, because it seems to me all that talk about a great deal on Friday is certainly starting to sound like every other BS peace deal. And I say that, I know they're talking, they think they're close, but you have the Iranians saying, no, we're never going to give up our nukes. We're going to continue putting tolls on the strait. And then you have Donald Trump yesterday basically holding a weak hand, actually going all in, saying, okay, Saudi Arabia, okay, Turkey, all right, all these other countries that are never going to join the Abraham Accords. The only way that's going to work is if all of you join the Abraham Accords. And the Saudis have already said, we're not going to do it. We're not going to do it without a Palestinian state. So tell us where we are this morning at 6:10 East Coast time in the United States. Is there a peace deal? Are they really moving forward to one? Or is this just more of the same?
So, Joe, it is, as your comments suggest, a very confusing and disheartening situation. It's obvious to me that President Trump badly wants out of this war. He's looking for an exit ramp as hard as he can. He feels that another round of kinetic strikes will be difficult for the U.S., for the U.S. military, is unlikely to easily achieve his goals, will lead inevitably to some kind of ground invasion of Iran, which is the last thing that I think he wants. And so he has come up with a peace proposal that is so far short of the war aims that he had when he started. Back then, he was talking about unconditional surrender. What he's got now is a memorandum of understanding to defer negotiation about the hardest issues involving the Iranian nuclear program to a 60-day period, hopefully opening the Strait of Hormuz right away, which, again, that's his primary goal. Get the oil flowing, get gas prices down, get at the political problems off of his back. What we saw over the weekend was the White House getting just a few inches from outright announcing this deal, and enemies of the deal beginning to make that difficult, if not impossible. It's clear that IRGC forces in the Gulf were preparing to strike U.S. forces, 2 aircraft carrier task forces that we have in the region. And CENTCOM inevitably, appropriately took action yesterday to strike those Iranian bases. Meanwhile, Israel's Prime Minister Netanyahu says, I'm not taking my foot off the pedal. I don't plan to end my war against Hezbollah in Lebanon. There have been roughly 70 Israeli strikes in the last days to show that Israel's serious about continuing that war. And meanwhile, Moshtaba Khamenei, the new supreme leader in Iran, issued a statement. He doesn't speak much. He's thought to be hiding so far underground, but he issued a statement yesterday worth paying attention to. I'll just read it. He said, "The hands of time do not turn backward, and the lands of the region will no longer serve as shields for the American bases." He said that today, and I was haunted by the beginning of that. The hands of time do not turn backward. And, Joe, we've been talking now for months about this war, about the mistakes, about the difficulties. And the truth is we are where we are. Trump wants an exit ramp, as I said, but he's running out of road. He doesn't have much left.
Right.
And you can't turn back the hands of time.
Well, and whether you're talking about Bob Kagan saying that this is one of the most significant losses in U.S. military history, or so many other people who actually do follow this, even Republicans that follow this, who are hawks against Iran, have just said clearly that this deal is a loss. The Wall Street Journal editorial page, we'll be reading it later, saying, are you kidding me? Is this it? Is this really why Donald Trump took us to war? Because this is a disaster. The president keeps talking about it, how we're going to end Iran's nuclear program, Mika. This deal,
Yep.
as people recognize, does not do that. And if you punt the ball, the Iranians will never do a deal. So suddenly Donald Trump, if he did this deal, would find himself in a position far weaker than Barack Obama ever was. That's data. That's not opinion.
Yeah.
That's data. And if somebody says fake news to that, well, that person's lying, and they reveal themselves as a liar, because we're talking about data. We're talking about numbers. We're talking about the fact that we're in a worse position if we make this deal than we were before the war on nukes, and we're in a worse position on this deal on the Strait. And just very quickly, again, I'm not saying that. Lindsey Graham, who was the chief proponent, the chief cheerleader for this war, is saying that. Ted Cruz is saying that. The chairman of the Armed Services Committee, the Senate Armed Services Committee, Roger Wicker, is saying that. The Wall Street Journal editorial page is saying that. And yes, in a very ominous sign, the hardliners on the far right in Iran, who have taken over the government, are saying that as well. This is a deal that would be a complete and total surrender for the United States of America. And again, I've always said Iran can't have nukes. I have always said that. The president has said that, and 7 United States presidents have said that. Iran cannot have nukes. This deal will allow them to keep nukes, and it will allow them, according to them, to continue making money off the Straits and be in a better position economically and politically after the war than they were before the war. That seems like a losing proposition. And Democrats and Republicans, other than poor Mike Johnson, my God, how sad, what a sad political existence to have to go along with the president on every single bad thing that's done. Mike Johnson, I think, is one of the few Republicans saying this is a good idea. It is not, according to Republicans, Democrats, the Wall Street Journal editorial page. And I got to say also, Netanyahu, who continues to level Lebanon. The war against Lebanon and everybody in the region goes on unabated, and he's putting his foot on the gas, which means he's going to kill more civilians. There's already been 3,600 civilians killed in this short blitz to Lebanon, 3,600 people. It's going to continue. He says it's going to get tougher because this man on the left, and we have said it here every day because it's true, whether you can deal with the truth or not, it's the truth. Benjamin Netanyahu will continue fighting wars because if he stops fighting wars, he will have to face justice at home, and that will not be pretty. And he then at some point will have to answer for, look, this is a guy right here that was responsible for Hamas being funded in a way that allowed them to kill Israelis on October 7th. He went to Qatar. He sent his Mossad agents to Qatar 3 weeks before the attacks. And Qatar said, do you want us to continue funding Hamas? They go, of course we do. Of course we do. So he funded Hamas through Qatar, which, again, a group that he said is a terrorist group his entire political life. And then when they attacked, no response from Israel. In some cases for 10, 11, 12, 13 hours. And he's going to have to answer that. Why am I bringing that up now? I'm bringing that up now because we've been saying for years that he will continue fighting wars and continue killing people as long as he can. Because when the killing stops, the justice begins for Benjamin Netanyahu, and he does not want that to happen.
So you've laid out a lot of dynamics here as to how and why this war in Iran is happening and how it's going. And even what Roger Wicker and Lindsey Graham and a lot of Republican lawmakers are now saying, or what concerns they might have. And hardworking Americans may not have time to follow every detail like that. But this weekend, they saw it at the gas pump, filling up their cars, paying sometimes over $100 to fill up their trucks, like they can't afford this war from their perspective. This war is costing hard-working Americans a lot of money. And there's not a lot of understanding as to, number one, how it's going, and number two, the why, given the outcome. And David Ignatius, given the outcome right now, it seems the one thing that's very consistent is that Iran is proving itself to be what anybody who has any knowledge in this field would have predicted, an enemy unlike anything Donald Trump has dealt with before, an enemy that has a mind of its own and doesn't care about what Donald Trump says they should do.
You know, Mika, Trump was convinced in the early hours, days of this war that Iran would capitulate. He hit them with overwhelming force. He was coming off a quick, easy victory in Venezuela, and he thought these guys will cave. You know, this won't take long. The United States is so powerful, and they have resisted. They have taken a beating. Nobody should be confused about how much damage has been done to the Iranian military and to parts of its nuclear weapons program. But they're still standing, and Trump doesn't have a good answer for how to deal with that. He's got an idea that, in a kind of romantic way almost, is attractive. He says to Iran, let's help you become a more modern country. Let's help you move out of this era of revolution and confrontation. He even was saying over the weekend, let's have you join the Abraham Accords and be with Israel, which was, it's wonderful to think about that, but it's so unrealistic that it just is completely separate from the reality of this conflict right now. So, as I said earlier, Trump is really at a dead end. He's in a military morass. He's at a strategic dead end. His effort to get out of this for the moment, and let's wait and see what today's events bring, has not brought the memorandum of understanding. He's got the top negotiators in Doha, in Qatar, from Iran, so it's possible that by the end of the day we'll see something different. But this is a measure of just how badly the strategy that the White House and Israel planned has gone.
We just really laid out here, and wasn't planned, but what I talked about how Donald Trump has said, and every other president said, Iran can't have nukes. So you have that reality here that Donald Trump is moving towards, said he wants to move towards. But this deal won't do that. This deal will kick the can down the road and nothing will ever happen. Iran will not give up their nukes. And then you talked about gas prices. Right. And so the president really is in this catch-22. Does he end the war and help Americans on gas prices? Or does he leave an Iran that still has nukes, that has more power of the strait than before the war, and that will be more ominous, more dangerous, and more of a threat to the Gulf allies that told the president not to get into this war at the beginning? So it is a catch-22, and the question is whether Americans are going to have to put up with that short-term gain for the president to figure out what he's going to have to do to make sure that the Iranians will never have a nuclear weapon that they can threaten the United States with. And right now, he's stuck in the middle of that, and the Iranians are not giving him an off-ramp.
I think it was supposed to be short, right? That was 2 weeks or something like that.
And here's the thing. I've got to say this, Mika. Idiots have been knocking idiots, and they're just idiots. Have been going around talking about pointy-headed bureaucrats, and maybe that was George Wallace, but they sure sounded like it during the Trump campaign, talking about experts. Everybody's saying experts aren't. Oh, so much of the MAGA movement is fueled by hatred of experts. Well, let me tell you what experts told everybody about Iran. Don't go. Don't go into Iran, because if you go into Iran, they'll cut off the strait immediately. Your father said it 15 years ago. People have been saying it since the early 1980s. You can't do it because they'll cut off the strait. And yet they did it anyway. So the so-called experts were warning them. David Ignatius, every day on this show, leading up to the war, what did he say? Mr. President, with all due respect, sir, Iran is not Venezuela.
No.
I mean, I told him on the phone, Iran is not Venezuela. Yeah. Don't listen to Lindsey Graham. Don't do it. Iran is not Venezuela. But he thought it was. Experts told him he wasn't. If he had talked to anybody on the Iran desk in the CIA, they would have said, no, this is a nightmare. You will get entangled in a quagmire there. Don't go. And so yeah, experts, sometimes, actually, you need to pick up the phone and call one or two of them, because they will stop you from getting involved in what Bob Kagan, an expert, says could be one of the greatest military defeats in the past century.
All right, we're gonna get back to this and sneak in a quick break right now. On the other side, we'll read from the Wall Street Journal editorial that Joe mentioned on the potential for President Trump to bail out on Iran. Admiral Kirby and Katty Kay weigh in on that. Also ahead, early voting getting underway in South Carolina today, even as state lawmakers work to redraw congressional lines. We'll talk about that ongoing effort and what it could mean for the midterms. And as we go to break, a quick look at the traveler's forecast this morning from AccuWeather's Bernie Rayno. Bernie, how's it looking?
Mika, it's a great day across the Northeast and Mid-Atlantic. Your exclusive AccuWeather forecast, 80 in Portland, 82 Boston, 80 in New York City. Watch this area, though, Washington, D.C., Charleston toward Louisville, where there will be a shower and thunderstorm around today. Similarly, the Southeast, it's warm, it's humid, it's thunderstorms scattered about, and that's going to produce some travel delays. Your exclusive AccuWeather travel forecast in Atlanta, but many locations along the East Coast will be A-OK. To help you make the best decisions and be more in the know, download the AccuWeather app today.
Hey, welcome back to Morning Joe. It's about 6:30 on the East Coast. Here's a look at the White House. Apparently, a county fair with a tilt-a-whirl is coming in. One of those slingshot things. Maybe those two cranes are for slingshot that they're. No, wait a second, Mika. That's UFC. They're
right.
For some reason going to do a 250th anniversary celebration in the backyard of the White House.
Okay.
If you got them, smoke them, I guess. If that floats your boat, baby. It's garish, to say the least, but why should that surprise us?
I mean,
Mika?
I'd like to continue to be surprised.
You're speechless.
Yeah.
I am. The Wall Street Journal editorial board is writing about the negotiations in Iran and asking whether Trump will bail out the regime. That piece reads in part, a pledge not to build a nuclear weapon means nothing, because the regime has always said that while doing that, the opposite. The regime only has to wait out the Trump administration to gain a freer hand. Iran's history is to drag out negotiations, and this preliminary deal is no doubt part of that strategy. Reopening the strait will reduce oil prices, but in the president's reluctance to do so by force, he has signaled that Iran holds the trump card. Even if successful, the deal would leave that card intact and looming. And Admiral Kirby, if you could talk a little bit about negotiating with a country like Iran, past experience would give us some information about how that's going to go and what a deal really looks like. And quite frankly, is a deal really a deal?
It took us 2 years to negotiate the JCPOA with John Kerry under the Obama administration. And it took that long for two reasons. One, the Iranians are tough negotiators, Mika. They They don't give an inch without an awful lot of discussion and back and forth. And number two, when you're talking about a nuclear weapons program or a potential nuclear weapons program, you're talking about a lot of science, a lot of engineering, a lot of technical details. And it took a team, back to Joe's point about experts, it took a team of experts to back up John Kerry, including our energy secretary, who had expertise in this, to work through the nitty-gritty of those details. You can't just wish it away in 60 days and say, okay, it's over, and they're not going to pursue that or be able to pursue a nuclear weapons program in the future. It takes a lot of dogged determination and scientific expertise. The Iranians are very good at that. I hope that whoever we bring to the table is going to be good at that too.
Well, but they won't be. Because, I mean, you look at what the Iranians did during those negotiations, what they did with John Kerry and Wendy Sherman and other people on the other side. They brought nuclear experts. They brought engineers. They brought scientists who are at the top of their field to negotiate this. They don't wing it. It's not like firing a couple of missiles and then telling Delcy Rodriguez, intimidating her and saying, we're going to take your oil. Run the country. We won't kill you. You just give us your oil. That's never going to happen in Iran. And Jonathan Lemire, even this talk about, first of all, they will never do a deal on nukes voluntarily. They will never do a deal on nukes voluntarily unless something radically bizarre shifts. And we could have, and this is what I keep hoping for, a Soviet-style collapse could happen. You never know. Nobody knew in early 89, that was going to happen by the fall. But most likely, the nukes deal, like the Wall Street Journal editorial page said, the nukes deal won't ever happen if you push this off, because that's what the Iranians do. But then let's talk about the other issue, the Strait. We keep hearing the United States, the president keeps saying, oh, the Strait's wide open, and Marco and others, Strait's wide open. The Iranians go, no, it's not. We're still going to assess tolls. We'll call them environmental fees. But no, we haven't agreed to that. So as the Wall Street Journal editorial page says, the Iranians are strengthened. They understand that they are holding a card that can shut down the Trump card, as the Wall Street Journal editorial said, that can shut down the world's economy. They are not going to let Donald Trump get off cheap. They're just not going to do it. So there are only two ways forward. You can have the abject surrender that the Wall Street Journal and Bob Kagan and Roger Wicker and Ted Cruz and Lindsey Graham are talking about, or you can continue fighting this war and do what it takes to get the nukes. Both options are horrible.
And President Trump is so clearly desperate for a deal that he and White House aides over the weekend, particularly Friday and Saturday, saying this is 95% done. Well, the 5% that was left was the Strait of Hormuz and the Iran's uranium, the biggest stuff. And that's why we don't have a deal yet, and we may not get there unless, as you say, Joe, Trump takes a really bad deal. And there is a sense in Washington he might be willing to do that, though that would be humbling. He feels like he can sell it anyway, that he can claim it's better than what the Obama team got. And as our friend John Heilman always says, with Trump, it's either confession or projection. And it was noteworthy over the weekend. He kept ripping the Obama negotiating team as, in his words, rank amateurs, where, as we just discussed, they were experts. Maybe they got a good deal, maybe they didn't, but they were experts. What the Trump team now has are rank amateurs, and they have not been able to get a deal at all. And Caddy K, the Strait of Hormuz is not open. And Iran, even if they do agree to something in the coming days or weeks, has shown they can close it at any time. So that's why there are some on the right. And Trump 2.0, he's usually pretty impervious to Republican criticism. In his first term, when he'd hear senators go on Fox News, sometimes that would make him budge. This time he hasn't, but he's also never faced a chorus this loud before from his own party saying, don't take a bad deal.
Yeah, and despite some of the profanity issued by some of the White House spokespeople over the course of the weekend, Stephen Chung, thinking of you, it does seem that the president backed away from announcing a deal over the weekend because of the criticism that came from Republican voices. But at the moment, we're just negotiating how much pain America is prepared to tolerate. When you look at all of the key issues, it's how many missiles will Iran be able to keep? How much frozen money will Iran get in assets and sanctions relief? How much uranium will Iran get to be able to keep at whatever degree of enrichment? How much control will Iran get to keep of the Strait of Hormuz, whether it's through some environmental cost that they impose on people or whether it's through an outright toll that they took? And how much proxies will Iran get to carry on funding with all of the money that it's making? I mean, Admiral Kirby, it's very hard to see if you're looking at the position that America is in now and the realistic things that it might be able to get from Iran that Iran would agree to, given how desperate Donald Trump is to have some kind of a deal, any kind of a deal. I mean, these look more like terms of surrender, of America's surrender, than they do a kind of deal that would actually constitute something that you might have understood as a deal.
Yeah, that's true. And I think it certainly it is a big contrast to what they said they were going into the war at the beginning to accomplish. None of those things have been accomplished, except maybe destroying the Iranian Navy. But it leaves Iran, as you rightly said, in a stronger position from a geopolitical perspective, both in terms of the Strait and their nuclear ambitions and regime survival. Remember, that's what these guys really want. They want survival. The IRGC is firmly in command. They don't want to go anywhere. And they've got the nuclear program and they've got the Strait of Hormuz now as their trump cards, to put it bluntly. And they're going to use those. And I think, to your other point about pain, Caddy, don't underestimate the degree to which the IRGC is willing to sustain a lot of pain. I mean, it's not just about the economic pressure. This is a regime that doesn't really care that much about the economic pressure, except to the degree that they can fund their terrorist activities going forward. They don't care about the economic pain to the Iranian people, and so they can withstand an awful lot of pressure in that regard and drag this out for as long as possible, which is what I think they're going to do.
MSNOW national security analyst, retired Rear Admiral John Kirby, thank you very much for coming on this morning. We appreciate it. And coming up, voters in Texas return to the polls today to decide the closely watched GOP Senate primary runoff. We'll discuss where things stand in the race following President Trump's endorsement and what the outcome could mean for November as Democrats hope to win big in the state. Morning, Joe. We'll be right back.
I really don't think it was about me. I think it's very different from the Cassidy and Massey situation because I've been a Trump ally, as you point out. I think he got frustrated with the Senate not able to get what he wanted when he wanted it. And as you know, the president can be a pretty impatient guy, and I certainly understand that. He's a chief executive guy. He's not a legislative guy. And so I think he just got frustrated, and he wanted to send a message.
That was Senator John Cornyn of Texas. I know.
No, that's not it, Senator. Senator, that's not it. You see, Senator, your problem is you have not been indicted like Kenny Boy. And you also have not deserved impeachment like Kenny Boy.
You haven't shown the level how far you would go to be perhaps fraudulent.
You just aren't as sleazy as Kenny Boy. And so, President doesn't like you. He thinks you're boring.
He's frustrated with that.
You should have had more indictments, I guess, if you wanted the president's endorsement. But, some things aren't worth the president's endorsement. We'll get to that in a second. First, Mika, I want to talk about a birthday boy, David Ignatius. David, do I understand it's your birthday today?
Oh, my God.
You
David.
got that right. What do you do on your birthday? You get up at 5 in the morning and you come into Morning Joe and you hang around with your friends.
There you go.
But yes, this is my birthday.
David.
That's a good birthday.
Let me tell you something, David. Yeah, a lot of people, when they turn 49, are very worried about the 50s turning 50. I'm going to assure you, the 50s are the best. They really are.
Yeah,
I'm not just saying
you're going to be good.
You're going to be at the peak powers there, baby. The peak powers. So, David, you don't worry about a thing on this 49th birthday.
Yeah.
The next 2 years ahead are going to be great for you. So.
Yeah. Happy birthday.
That's the nicest birthday wish I've had is that you have a great 49th birthday. Thank you very much, Joe.
Have a great 49th birthday. David, I want to ask you really quickly before we move on to Kenny Boy, Ken Paxton and John Cornyn. I want to just, as we close out our first hour of discussion on Iran, breakdown because you hear the president, and again, it's actually confession here where the president is just obsessed trying to convince people that Obama got a worse deal than he got. You know, you and I talked about this a long time. I didn't like the deal because I said you just can't trust the Iranians under any circumstance. And in real time, you said it is an existential gamble. You said you supported the deal, but you understood it was an existential gamble. It's a conversation we had over months. And I think if you look at the numbers, you were right and I was wrong. But I want you to just give the numbers of how the Obama deal was so much better than where we are now since the president got rid of the Obama deal in 2018 and has started this war that actually may put her on in really its strongest position in a very long time.
So, Joe, the Obama deal had strict limits on enrichment, and they were verified and enforced by a very intrusive inspection by the IAEA. Iran was really under international control in this period. And there was no evidence that the Iranians were cheating. Trump's decision to blow that deal up, as I look back, was just a fundamental mistake, and we've been careening around ever since, trying to get back to limits that are similar to the JCPOA limits. I mean, this war is going to end, and Trump's efforts to do that, any reasonable person would say, good luck, Mr. President. But if they end with the United States and Israel more vulnerable to the rebirth of an Iranian nuclear program, or this war just starting up again for another round, we'll look back and just shake our heads that, what a terrible mistake. So it's a moment to really, think clearly. How should this war end? Be strong, Mr. President. Be sensible. Try to end it, but not on terms that make everybody weaker.
Okay, we've got a lot of other news to get to, including the efforts by New Jersey's governor to get into a detention center where there is a hunger strike playing out. But first, let's talk Texas. Joining us now, former White House communications director to President Obama, Jen Palmieri, joins us. Good to have you on the set back with us this morning, Jen. What's at stake in what's going to be happening tonight in Texas and all the dynamics playing out, including Donald Trump's endorsement of not John Cornyn?
Yeah, so, and it does, I don't know, looks like Ken Paxton's going to win. But, and when you see Texas is Texas, it's very difficult. I think a lot of Democrats might think it's Austin, Houston, and Dallas.
Very difficult.
Places like Tyler.
The extent to which, if Ken Paxton wins, shows Trump's hold.
And on the Republican Party. But the fact that Tallarico continues to do well in statewide polling. Of course, he's the Democratic nominee. And I think people need to appreciate Texans have been living with Ken Paxton and his shenanigans and his legal troubles for a long time. So it does feel like, in a surprising way even, that people who normally vote for Republicans, maybe they're independents, maybe they're Republicans, are open to voting for Tallarico and like giving him a real shot. And it sort of feels not like the tip, we've all been here before with Texas going blue, but a tipping point sort of across the country with Republicans getting tired of what's going on with Trump.
I still think it's really hard.
For sure. This is the Democrats' best chance, probably, at Texas, but it is still going to be very difficult. It also might prove to be a one-off. Maybe Texas isn't really in play yet, but just the circumstances this year does break well for them. But at minimum, if indeed Paxton gets through, which I agree, I think most analysts feel like he will, then suddenly this gets just harder for Republicans across the map because Tallarico is a huge fundraising advantage over Paxton, and the Republicans are going to have to spend a ton of money to support him there at the expense of other states where Democrats then may be able to win and flip the chamber.
Yeah, and that's just, that has its own value. It's the fact that if you got to spend $90 million in Texas or whatever, like that, like very expensive place. And then and in a year like this, I mean, it's certainly true now. I feel like it was true 5 months ago. If you're a Republican in the Senate, you cannot feel safe. Right? If you're a Republican candidate in the Senate, you cannot feel safe. You have Ohio as well as Texas. Montana, where there's an independent that is running, Seth Bodnar. He was president of the University of Montana. Depending on how the Democratic primary plays out there, that could be that, Montana is in play. There's all sorts of, it just makes it a lot more harder
Iowa,
for them.
Alaska, who knows? Yeah.
Iowa looks... Yeah. Alaska is a really interesting place where Democrats have been doing really smart things and organizing. It's a very dynamic place. There's a lot of interesting young leaders there too. So Texas, just that money hole that it becomes for the Republicans at a minimum, but also, nothing changes until it does.
Right.
Even if it's not blue, they could vote for a Democratic senator.
Jen, stay with us. Coming up, what does it mean to be an American? That's something one of our next guests is exploring in a new book that traces the country's battle over identity. Former Deputy National Security Advisor under President Obama, Ben Rhodes, joins us straight ahead with that. We're back in just a moment with the second hour of Morning Joe.